So, good morning to me. Yesterday I was trying to do something with this book, Spiritual Economy, to put some audio visual notes up online and to reflect on the pages as I read it, because very often when I'm trying to read these books, it's really what's most interesting are reflecting. And yet I don't have any record of that. I often keep the notes from the book. So this time I'm going to try something different. I've already set up a OneNote on my laptop, but I'm recording here on the PC, the mini PC, simply because I have this set up nicely with a recording device, a microphone, and also the other computer just has lots of problems, lots of issues, and I can't record in OneNote because it's so poor. It's just the quality is too bad, and so this is why I am now recording with Zoom on the cloud, because even when I recorded to my computer, that didn't work. And I ended up with only getting a 5-minute video. So I had to buy more space on the cloud in order to record onto the cloud, because somehow that seems to work better. So I set up this Zoom room specifically called Spiritual Ecology, and that name will come up on the recordings on the cloud. So this should be easy to find. So this is recording number 1, and I've started reading the book with chapter 1, which is very basic, really. This is a very basic book, which is very nicely written. It will be very useful for teachers and youth workers for the simple reason that Marion has structured what's relevant and important, and it's something you could work with young people or people who are totally new to this kind of a tradition. And so it's a very easy, soft way into the world of the magic of nature. And I think it's such a small book, and Marion excels in her ability to beautifully structure nice, clean, without getting into rigmaroles, which is what I always do, get down into the depths. So she is really, after my heart, a kind of broad structure kind of a person. She sees the bigger picture. So I've written notes for that section 1, and I'm just going to pick up and maybe say a few things which I was trying to record yesterday, and this is about the 3rd time. I'll just read a little bit. There's not very much in that of note, but she notes that schools do not teach the arts of awareness to the subtle senses we possess, nor the ability to recognize the value of intuition, the stillness of meditation, and common sense. Today, religion seems either to follow authoritarian rules and prayers, or a very strong book-led form of instruction as to how life should be. So then she just goes on and mentions how in the past decades, probably in my lifetime, I would say, that there has been a growth in nature-based spirituality in the West at the same time as a decline in formal, traditional religion in Ireland. It's Catholicism, Catholicism is already very close to paganism, at least the Irish variant, so to speak. And the culture is still very recent in Western Europe and in Central and Northern Europe. This occult spiritualism, spiritualists, seances, all of that was very, very common among the middle class, despite the whole thing about books, being book-led is a different thing to having some actual records in the day and age that we live in, where everything is we're so used to books, and it's very useful. At the same time, we have a lot written in nature, written in the earth, in the stones, in the runes, in the peaks and valleys, in the hills, and in the plants that grow. What grows? Where do they grow? How do they, and so on. And so I think all of that is really relevant to earth-based spirituality. Also, the paganish traditions of the rural parts of Ireland are still, they're there in pockets. They haven't been eradicated. There's lots of knowledge. There's lots of living culture in Ireland of the old, the remnants of the old. So you can just start to piece it together, and really what we're doing in Druidry is, modern Druidry is, in a sense, an emerging spirituality, which is quite different. It has been gradually emerging from the historical Western European tradition, and it's often the kind of the one that which has suppressed, which has been conquered, which has been colonized. The people have been colonized. There has been a war on this tradition and culture for thousands of years. And now you start to see that it still exists. And it's something I've come to see myself, that as someone who grew up with no religion, I start to see that there's so much missing. There's nothing in atheism. I joined a beautiful atheist community. They can create community. They're lovely, really, really nice people. They can go and do climate action, human rights, all this kind of thing. But there's no tradition. It's just kind of very shallow. When you go deep into it, there's nothing there. It's a very shallow rabbit hole. And it is a rabbit hole I went down, and I came back with a lot of knowledge, because the one thing that atheists do is they're interested in religion, and they study religion. They can have conversations about all the different religions. So it's almost like they're outside and they're looking into this amazing world of religion and tradition and thing. And they see the good and the bad. It's not, but there are a few hardcore atheists holding it together that are there is no God. And they never say there is no God, of course, because that way they could never win a debate. Because all of the debates, which is something I learned, and I learned a little bit about debating from atheists, it was really good. And what I found is they took a position that there is no proof that there's God or the supernatural, and therefore the onus is on those who believe in that to prove it. And of course, they never then have to prove that there is no God, or there is no supernatural, no divinity, no other explanation other than the materialistic worldview. And I've personally gone through that, explored religion. I see how religion is part of our human psyche. I think that's the only way I could describe it. That every human being is oriented towards something which is something we can use the word spiritual. We have experiences. The physical world that we perceive is quantifiable. And that's why people in that materialist and atheistic position have come to believe that nothing exists, only that which is quantifiable. And everything else is just a matter of opinion. And then what you find in Western philosophy and the post-structuralist model is that everything is socially constructed. And while there's a really good argument to be made that a lot of is socially constructed, and that human societies are constructed socially, that's a very different thing to then presuppose, which is what happens in reality if you don't have any grounding in with any core knowledge about an experience of life. So if that's all you have is everything is socially constructed, then what you start to see is the post-structuralists focused on narrative. And so basically what they're saying when you deconstruct, what they're actually doing is they're creating, what they believe in is the narrated construction of society. So they think that that society is the narrative, and then if you change the narrative, then you bring about change. If you change the words, the meaning of a specific word, the semantics, and the meaning of the words and the meanings that the language, the communications, and the pragmatic meaning of things, that changes. So that's a linguistic construction of society, and that is not social construction. That is not how I understand it. And I'm a bit more before that became really dominant, shall we say, and it's political. But linguistic construction is a huge part of magic. I mean, magical spells, the use of language to delude, confuse, disrupt, terrify, control, and so on and so forth. Language is basically a huge part of magic. So yeah, that's so that really is the world we live in today. And Marion doesn't go into that level of detail. But I spoke to Marion actually a few times, and the last time I spoke to her was in Street at the winter gathering, the Obod winter gathering last year in 2023, and I talked to her about magic, how I understood magic, and I was really interested in my understanding of what is magic, conforms with Marion's understanding of what is magic, and pretty much, yeah, we do, we're on the same page. And she told me about this book, and I said, I'll get it, and here I am reading it. And the magic of nature is to really understand that magic and how. So I think it's really possible to connect what is actually magic, and to use magic purposefully and knowingly, and with art, as an art, as a tool, however you like to say it, to bring about change in the world, if you understand it. And you don't need all history of esotericism and the occult and all that. But actual fact, that is, once you start to use magic and deploy magic, that whole world history, that becomes fascinating. And for me, that is fascinating. So that's a kind of a side interest, but it's not essential to actually doing magic and to understanding magic. So that's where I've come to. And so that kind of brings us up to the part of page 16, and she has a new section. So I might have a read of that new section, and then I'll do another little video. So let's see, did this one record? That's the question. I'm talking to myself, and if it didn't record, there would be no record of it not recording. It's the irony. So